But as we're talking about who God is and what that means for us, one pressing question that sometimes people ask is, okay, so this big God exists out there and he really cares for us this much. Why is he so hidden? Why doesn't he make
Mm,
himself more clear for us? Like the problem of divine hiddenness.
yeah. Well, um, I would say he is hidden physically, that's for
Mhm.
sure, because you don't see him walking around, at least not with our naked eyes.
Yeah.
However, when we're talking about spiritually, it need not necessarily be hidden per se. At least, I think, well, you can't see God and know God in that way, in the physical way, but
Mhm.
certainly on that spiritual plane, he is knowable. He is, you can see him. Now obviously there are things that keep us from sensing and truly seeing uh, God's ways, such as our sin, and that definitely keeps us from seeing God and sensing him, or the fact that he is transcendent, right?
Mhm.
His ways are higher than our ways. But I want to argue that while God is hidden from us physically, on the spiritual plane, he's not necessarily hidden, so to speak. The Apostle Paul says in 2 Corinthians 5, we walk by faith and not by sight. Our relationship with God is such that you can see him, you can understand his reality on that spiritual level, um, in the way of faith, in the way of walking with him on that level. Now, the thing that keeps us from seeing him is, in that spiritual sense, is our sin. When we sin, um, we don't sense him. When we sin, actually, we tend to do things our way, right? But but when our hearts are tender, when we are open to what he wants us to do, sure, you may not see God, but boy, there's something about your heart that is aligned with his. With
Mhm.
his, you got to help your neighbor, and when you do, um, it's not as though uh, you don't see God in the midst of that activity. You do see Him, right? Because you know in your heart that He was there, that you did the right thing. He was pleased. So it's in that sense, I would say, that we do see God, but sin gets in the way.
Mhm.
So at least that's one way
Yeah.
I would approach it.
Yeah, I think that's a helpful way of putting it that we see him, but maybe in different ways than some people,
Mhm.
demand of God. And, we can't make
Yes,
demands how God needs to reveal himself to me. But
right.
like you said, part of it is that surrender to his guidance and,
Mhm.
um, just really kingship in my life, to
Yeah.
surrender my sin to him, and be like, "Okay, God, I trust you. I'm gonna do life your way and follow your
Mhm.
guidance well for my life." And then
That's
in
true.
those moments, that's where you get to be closer with him, uh,
Mhm.
and experience him in special ways. So I
Mhm.
think I think that really helps. I think too, if I'm not sure that God promises that he's going to reveal himself to us in supernatural ways. People are
Mhm.
always like, if he wrote his name in the sky, I'd believe. I'm not sure
Mhm.
he ever promises that that's something he would do or even should do. But
Mhm.
if the Bible's true, that Jesus really came, what more revelation do we need from God than
That's
him
true.
literally taking on flesh and dwelling among us? I think
That's
I
true.
think if he's done that, that's enough revelation for me,
Yes.
to
Yes.
entrust my life to him. So, I think that's helpful.
Yeah. And
But yeah.
it's always through the eyes of faith, right, that you do see and understand God. I can't help but remembering that incident back in the '60s when the Soviet Union sent a cosmonaut to outer space,
Mm,
and of course, them being sort of atheistic, when the cosmonaut looked out there in outer space, he said, "Well, here I am in outer space, in the heavens. I don't see any God out here."
mm,
And so he declared therefore there is no God. Well, there is something about that that is very instructive, because to him, he's looking at outer space, looking at the whole thing physically, and there is no God. Um, but but with a different lens,
Mhm.
with an eye with the eyes of faith, right? All these things, actually, the
Mhm.
beauty of outer space actually confirms that there is a powerful God. But it all depends on the lens you put on to see
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because when Americans went up, I think it was John and Glenn, when they got up
Mm,
there, didn't they record themselves reading the beginning of Genesis
that's right.
as they
That's right.
gazed out into outer space? We're like, "In the beginning, God created the heavens
That's
and the
right.
earth."
That's right.
So, uh, I think well, they see evidence for God, everywhere in everything they see. And
Mm,
for others, because of their lens, they might be like, "No, I don't see evidence of God anywhere."
mm,
But
mm,
like those astronauts, I think, like you said, that we can gaze into the beauty of creation, that God
mm.
speaks through creation, reveals himself in that way.